Welcome back to KSI Morning Brief. This is Mashood and joining with me today is Anjana to take you through the latest on world markets and news. To begin with, global markets. World stock markets have rallied nearly 36% from March lows on hopes for a swift recovery from the coronavirus-induced collapse in world growth. World stocks climbed to a three-month high on Tuesday as the global coronavirus recovery effort won out over US-China tensions and the worst civil unrest in the United States in decades. Analysts said the protests may be alarming, but they are not impacting the stock market, which remains fixated on the economy's reopening. A big factor keeping the markets going is the trillions in stimulus from the Fed, other central banks, and governments around the world. The Dow was up by 1.05%, the S&P 500 was up by 0.82%, and the Nasdaq was up by 0.59%. Looking at Europe, European stocks rose to their highest level in almost 3 months, buoyed by the optimism about economies reopening and stimulus measures. The DAX index climbed 3.8% as German markets reopened after a holiday and as the chancellor seeks to broker a compromise on a second stimulus package. Lufthansa rose 3.4% after the airline overcame most of the barriers to receiving a $10 billion government bailout. France's CAC 40 index climbed 2% even after the country's finance minister said its economy will suffer a deeper recession than previously expected. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei rose 1.2% to its highest since late February, and markets in South Korea, Hong Kong, and China also gained as the central bank there also provided another shot of stimulus. This comes after stocks in the United States, Europe, and emerging markets hit their highest level on Tuesday since early March, and as the bidding for riskier currencies pushed the dollar towards three-month lows and oil near three-week high. Looking at US, the US Treasury yield curve is approaching its steepest level in 3 years as policy responses to the coronavirus pandemic on the economic front drive between intermediate and long-term interest rates. The spread between the 5-year and 30-year yields touched 117.6 basis points on Tuesday as long maturity yields rose to a two-month high. The curve slope was steeper on just one day this year, that's March 19th, in the edge of the liquidity crisis that prompted the Fed to ramp up its daily buying of treasuries. The Treasury Department on May 6th set bigger than expected auction sizes for 10-year notes, 30-year debt, and the first new 20-year bond in a generation. The shift indicated it will rely more heavily on long-term maturity issuance to raise nearly $3 trillion from April to June to finance economic recovery measures. Looking at China, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, one of the largest computing chip producers in China, plans to raise 2.8 billion through an initial public offering on the Skytech board of the Shanghai Stock Exchange. SMIC also received a 2.2 billion investment in May from National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund 2 and the Shanghai Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund 2, which are two of the largest national investment funds. The move comes just 2 months after the company announced a partnership with crypto miner maker Canaan Creative, and a few weeks after China disclosed a plan to move into digital currency. Next on Global News, we have Anjana to bring you some latest updates.
Thank you, Mashood. So looking at global news, according to the latest reports coming from the US, automakers are facing with problem of finding enough supplies for production. Last Thursday, Ford's Dearborn truck plant had to stop production early when it ran out of the seat it needed to build F-150 pickups. At the same time, General Motors had planned to add shifts last week, but it had to delay that move because it lacked sufficient parts. Each auto plant has hundreds of suppliers, which makes the challenge of keeping the entire supply chain operating particularly difficult since they had adopted just-in-time system. Looking at Europe, EasyJet says it hopes to resume flights on 75% of its route network by the end of August, although the number of daily services will still be significantly down for a normal summer season. Middle East, UN Saudi Arabia seeks to raise 2.41 billion for war-torn Yemen. Saudi Arabia, a major player in Yemen's war, is co-hosting a UN pledging conference to raise funds for aid operations. Saudi Arabia and United Nations are making an urgent plea for funding to shore up aid operations in war-torn Yemen. More news from Middle East. Saudi foreign exchange reserves fall again. Around 40 billion US dollars in foreign currency reserves were transferred to the Saudi Wealth Fund in March to April. Saudi Arabia's reserves fell for a second month after the kingdom said it had transferred 150 billion riyals to finance an investment spree by its sovereign wealth fund. Net foreign assets in Arab world's biggest economy declined by 20.9 billion in April, a decrease of 4.5% from the previous month. Looking at Asia, Asian fishermen and farmers go digital during virus. During a national lockdown, farmers from Malaysia, Cameron Highlands were faced with throwing away tons of fresh vegetables. Wet markets were shut down as social restrictions were introduced to stop the spread of virus. Addressing this issue, e-commerce solutions were introduced by a Singapore-based e-commerce platform Lazada to Malaysian markets. That's it from global news. Let's look at COVID-19 updates. The total cases have risen up to 6.2 million, with 376,320 deaths have been reported. 109,058 daily cases have been reported during the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, total cases are at 1,649 with 11 deaths, and 6 new cases have been reported during the last 24 hours. Looking at other updates, New Delhi launches an app for residents to check the availability of hospital beds. A mobile app has been developed in New Delhi for residents to check the number of beds available in the hospitals in the city. Although the Indian capital has reported more than 20,000 coronavirus cases, only 2,600 patients are currently admitted to hospitals in the city. Meanwhile, in New Zealand to ease coronavirus restrictions after 11 days with no reported cases, with only one active case of novel coronavirus nationwide and none reported over the past 11 days, New Zealand's government is poised to ease the coronavirus restrictions as soon as next week. Meanwhile, Mexico deaths passed 10,000 as restrictions eased. The country's health minister has announced that more than 10,000 people have died with coronavirus in Mexico. The announcement came on the same day that many restrictions brought in to curb the spread of the virus were lifted. That's it from KSI Morning Brief. We'll be joining you again tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Till then, bye from all of us.